seems like anxiety is so commonplace now. A lot of people are suffering from this. So today we're going to actually talk about anxiety in our children and how to help our kids find calm in a chaotic world. I love to write, and usually figuring out my weekly vlog isn't that hard for me, and getting lost in the idea and finding all my stuff that I want to write about and doing all of that. It's a lot of work and it takes me a lot of time, but it isn't hard because it's what I love to do. And it's something that I really, really enjoy. This one on anxious kids, this one was different. This one hit really, really close to home. And after reading all of this research, and I read a whole book for it actually, I got a lot of parent guilt. I felt afterwards that I had done a lot of it, if not most of it, all wrong. So I want to share with you what I have learned, hoping you can glean some insights so that you can learn, you can have choices, and maybe you can do better than I did. The beginning of this article is all about anxiety, the symptoms, the ways to help your child find ways of lessening the overwhelm happening to them physically and mentally. The second part comes from the book, The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness by Jonathan Haidt. He looks at anxiety in our youth as a generational issue that will be ongoing from generation to generation. He talks about the triggers in our society and ways we can eliminate anxiety in our youth. I would totally recommend this book to any parent, regardless of the age of your child. It is incredibly eye-opening. It seems that, we're going on to a new topic, it seems that every single generation gets a name. And when I was actually researching for this article, I found out, I did not know, that I am Generation X. I don't know what that means, but that's who I am. I never paid much attention to these names. However, interestingly enough, did you know that people who are now between the ages of 20 and 30, they had a name years and years and years ago that were called, and they were called the Now Generation. You won't find it on the internet. I can't give you the research to back me up. However, all of a sudden, everything in our society was within instant access. That's why they were called the Now Generation, because they wanted everything now. They couldn't wait for anything because so much was at their fingertips. And that was even before Google, right? But so much was happening and they didn't know how to wait. And so they were called the Now Generation. And they became so accustomed to playing games that would interact with them. They had, I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called a Game Boy. It was a little handheld thingy, and they could find answers, and they no longer needed to wait for anything. So they were referred to as this Now Generation, and experts were suggesting to parents to get their children involved in activities that delayed gratification. Now, you may be able to find a lot of articles from that time period, I would say around 2010, 2008, all about the importance of delayed gratification, things like sewing, music, puzzles, gardening, those kind of things. However, the name, the Now Generation, ceases to exist. And I believe it's because it is now believed, this is true, that every single generation from now to the end of existence, forever and ever, will be the Now Generation. So this seems like a huge, detour from the anxious generation. So why am I talking about this? Because we now have an anxious generation. And for the reasons we're going to talk about for why this generation is so anxious, it spans over the late millennials through the Alpha Gen, or the Gen Alpha generations. It's believed that that if we don't make some pretty drastic changes, we will forever have, just like the Now Generation, the anxious generation. And it will mark our children because of our lifestyle indefinitely through the generations. And this is all according to Haidt, but it's fascinating how he puts all of this together. So that was icky and that was heavy. And believe me, I know, because I have a child who suffers from social anxiety. So now we're going to dive in. Understanding anxiety. In 2022, a study was done by the CDC that found that 9.4% of the children in the United States suffer from anxiety. Okay, I have to tell you, I was totally shocked because I thought that number would be much higher. I thought it would at least be 23%. What exactly is anxiety? Anxiety is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and that can bring on physical changes like increased blood pressure. So it can be physical and it can be mental. While it is easy to confuse anxiety with fear, they both manifest similarly and they are different. It is interesting to note, this totally fascinated me. Both emotions engage the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Anxiety disorders often involve overactivity in these pathways, making individuals hypersensitive to perceived threats. That's the key word right there, perceived. So this is the part that fascinated me. The logical question then is, why or where would we experience anxiety? It is thought to have evolved to help us. So anxiety was something that evolved within us to help us anticipate and prepare for potential future threats, serving as a long-time survival mechanism. So who would think that anxiety could have stemmed from our need to remember to avoid dinosaurs? I know you think I'm making light of this topic, but it was getting pretty heavy and academic. But it kind of did come from something like that. So how do you recognize anxiety in your child? Anxiety can manifest differently in each child, making it challenging to identify its presence. However, there are several common signs and symptoms that may indicate an anxiety disorder. By recognizing these warning signs, you can take proactive steps, not reactive steps, towards addressing your child's anxiety and seek help where needed. Here are some common symptoms or behaviors: racing thoughts and feelings of overwhelm, excessive worry and fear, irritability and mood swings, difficulty concentrating, avoidance behaviors, social withdrawal, low self-esteem, and panic attacks. Physical symptoms: headaches, stomach problems, muscle tension, sleep disturbances. Understanding the signs and symptoms of anxiety is crucial for early intervention and effective treatment. There are some signs that are more subtle: feeling on the edge or nervous without any specific reason, experiencing a knot in the stomach or a sense of dread before a situation, having trouble relaxing or unwinding after a stressful event, feeling overwhelmed by minor tasks or responsibilities. How can I help my child reduce their anxiety? Developing effective coping mechanism strategies is crucial for your child to learn how to manage their anxiety. We're going to start with therapy. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is one of the most recommended therapies. I personally would say that if you have a child, start with someone who specializes in child therapy. So if you think CBT is a great type of therapy, match that with a child therapist, whether it's a counselor, clinician, psychologist, whatever, but look for those two to go together. Relaxation techniques, deep breathing exercises, visualization, progressive muscle relaxation, etc. Exercise and physical activity. Okay, don't underestimate the power of running around. Exercise has been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety by releasing endorphins, which are natural mood boosters. Plus, physical activity provides a healthy distraction from anxious thoughts and emotions. Your kiddo just concentrates on fun and play, not what is overwhelming them. Mindfulness and meditation. I have an entire article coming out April 15th about this very topic. It is so important. Mindfulness seems to be the new buzzword. However, it is true that if you can teach your child basic, and I'm talking basic, it'll be in that article, meditation and mindfulness techniques, your child will feel better about how to navigate their own anxiety. Grounding techniques. Grounding techniques involve focusing on the present moment to distract oneself from anxious thoughts and emotions. Examples of grounding techniques include paying attention to sensory experiences, such as the feeling of feet on the ground or the sound. This is another form of mindfulness. Self-care activities: reading, creative expression, nature, connection, and lots of vitamin D. social connections, mindful eating, setting boundaries, prioritizing, and sleep routine. By incorporating these effective coping mechanisms and strategies into daily life, individuals can develop the tools necessary to manage anxiety and improve their overall well-being. Now, I listed all of those, and I'm not thinking that you have to use all of those. I'm listing so many so you have a choice. Remember, managing anxiety is a journey, and it's okay to take things one step at a time. With patience, persistence, and the right support, anyone can learn to cope with anxiety and find peace in a chaotic world. Okay, so now, we're going to skip to step 2. Observations from the Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. According to the book that led me to this entire article, the phrase, the anxious generation, often refers to today's youth, particularly those in Gen Z and the millennials, who are facing rising levels of anxiety, stress, and mental health challenges. He claims that these are the challenges that they face, and these are the reasons why they're facing the anxiety. Academic pressure, social media and comparison, economic and job uncertainty, global issues, mental health, stigma. And the problem with these things is none of them are changing or lessening. So how do you help them overcome these obstacles? Promote open conversations about mental health, teach coping mechanisms and mindfulness, limit and regulate social media use, provide access to mental health resources, encourage physical activity, foster supportive communities, teach resilience and growth mindset, address economic concerns, which includes teaching financial literacy, and advocate for systematic changes in education, affordability, and job security. So what I found in the book, Haidt's claim is that there was a great rewiring of childhood. The great rewiring is not about the changes in technologies. It includes that shape the children's minds and how they use their time. But there's a second plot line that I found absolutely fascinating. And it's well-intentioned, but it has a disastrous shift towards overprotecting children and restricting their autonomy in the real world. And I totally saw how my generation did this. His central claim is that there were 2 disastrous trends that happened simultaneously: overprotection in the real world and underprotection in the virtual world. I greatly encourage you to read or listen. I listened to this book. It comes in 4 parts, and it's the 4 parts that gave me hope. The nature of childhood and how we, as a society, messed up. Okay, he did not say it that way, but he laid out his evidence for why he feels that the great unwiring is happening. So to me, that was the huge mess up, right? The harms that result from the new phone-based childhood. So he feels that there's a huge problem with the phone-based childhood, and he lays out why that is. What we must now do to reverse damage in our families, schools, and society. So yes, he actually gives many ideas to reverse damage and to move forward in a healthy, anxiety-free way. So change is possible if we can act together. Anxiety in children is a growing concern, but by understanding its roots and learning practical strategies, parents can empower their kids to navigate challenges and thrive. I liked Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, because it shows that we are now facing a generation grappling with anxiety and the challenges that go beyond the individual. But by making small changes, we can collectively create a less anxious world for our children. And that's what I loved about this book so much. It didn't just kind of vomit at us, these are all of our problems. Instead, it also said, this is what we can do to not only reverse damage we already have, but to move forward into a very healthy way. He gives us steps to make this happen. It's a very proactive book, and it's one with a silver lining, and that was really great. The movie quote, "You can't never let anything happen to him. Then nothing ever would happen to him." Dory in Finding Nemo. If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to send you a huge thank you. Please leave me a comment or review and share with other moms you know. Get in touch in the comments or on Carol's social media networks. See you next